This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And welcome to this edition of A Different Perspective. I am Kevin Randle. I'll be joined in just a moment by Tom Carey, who announced his retirement from the UFO field when he was in Roswell at the festival this year. And I thought we'd talk to him about that and get a little bit of information about his career in ufology and what he thinks are some of the best cases and some of the investigations he's conducted and that sort of thing. Before I bring him on, though, I want to mention I've known Tom for probably about 30 years. My introduction to him was phone calls from him when he couldn't get a hold of Don Schmitt. And I don't think he understood at the time that I was getting a lot of phone calls from people who couldn't get a hold of Don Schmitt at the time. And so I probably was a little short more than once with him about that because I was repeating information to him, to others who were calling about basically the same thing. And that was kind of an interesting thing. But I met Tom while we worked together on the Roswell case a number of times. We are two members, maybe the only two members of the Ken Tobey fan club. He was the captain in The Thing from Another World, if you remember. He's in a lot of movies. He pops up everywhere in the movie. So we just kind of formed a little bit of a bond over Ken Tobey and his career in movies, things like that. So when I learned that Tom had announced his retirement in Roswell, I thought it would be a good chance to chat with him about that. So here's Tom Carey, I think. Tom, welcome to A Different Perspective.
Nice to be with you, Kevin. You are correct that I think I mentioned in my email to you that I had an unexpected sighting of Kenneth Tobey, and I thought it would be a good way
Yes.
to grease the skids here. It was if you remember, maybe you don't, that in the mid-50s there was this craze of Davy Crockett. It was Davy Crockett craze. Everybody had a coonskin cap and all that sort of stuff, and there was a famous song about Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. Well, I had a sort of a yen to say, gee, I'd like to see that movie again because Walt Disney made a movie of it, just, called Davy Crockett. So I bought a DVD of the Davy Crockett movie. Well, guess who played Jim Bowie in that movie? Your friend.
I'll guess Ken Tobey.
Yes. And he, as you remember from other movies, that Jim Bowie had been injured or sick. He had some sort of respiratory ailment and he got wounded, and he was in this little room the whole time the battle was going on. And so they would go into this, and there's Kenneth Tobey. And so he had a couple talking scenes, and that was about it. I was shocked because I had seen the movie when I was a kid, but I didn't remember Kenneth Tobey, and I was shocked to see him there. So that's the latest.
Well, I think the last movie I saw him in was Single White Female, and he played the desk clerk at a hotel or something, and that was kind of it. Later in his career.
Well, he was also in. You remember the movie Airplane?
Oh yeah.
He was in the movie. He was one of the controllers, and he had a few speaking lines, but that was about it.
Well, like I said, as we were beginning here, that you had announced your retirement from ufology while you were in Roswell, and I wondered what precipitated that, and how did they receive it in Roswell?
Well, I'll answer the last part first. They gave me a standing ovation, so I don't know if they were, applauding for me or just clapping because I was leaving the field and they'd be rid of me. So I didn't know which one it was. I hope it was the former, but I thought it was a good time, Kevin, because this COVID thing. I had tested negative. Both my wife and I tested negative for it. And, but at the time, I was going to do this thing for the Travel Channel to go down to Washington and be interviewed down there. And they said, well, we can't, this is like 2 years ago. Well, we can't interview. You have to have the COVID. You have to be tested. You have to have the shots. So I got the Pfizer shots. And lo and behold, one morning I wake up and all my muscles hurt, all my joints hurt. My knees never hurt in my life. They still hurt now, all because of these Pfizer shots. And for about 6 months, I could barely walk. I had to teach myself to walk again. And along comes the 75th anniversary of the Roswell case. I had to cancel last year because, as you know, they have a festival every July, the UFO festival, and I've been going down there every year since 1994 or something like that. Well, I had to cancel last year because I couldn't walk, and my wife didn't want me to do a Stan Friedman and have a phone call. Oh, Mrs. Carey, your husband is flat on the floor in this airport here. Would you come and get him? So she didn't want to hear that. So I canceled last year. But this year, that was the 75th. I said, no matter what happens, I'm going because it's going to be it'd be nice. I'm actually walking now. Albeit, I still have to hold on to things. And I said, I'm going. And I will announce my withdrawal from the 31 years of on the case, Kevin. I was on the case 31 years, the only case I was on. I will announce during our last panel discussion that I am withdrawing from the case. And thank you to the museum for inviting me all those years, and thank you for Kevin Randle and Don Schmitt for allowing me to be part of your team. And they gave me a standing ovation, and I hope it wasn't because, oh boy, we're finally rid of them now. I hope it was for my contribution, such as it was to the case. I thought it was a good time to withdraw. The other reason is I've had these two other projects that I want to get to, and I'm not getting any younger. And I've been gathering information on this one project for the last 10 years, and I want to get on it. And quite frankly, Kevin, I didn't see how where we could, on the Roswell case, what more we could do. Short of a physical piece of evidence, I don't know, everybody's dead. The witness pool has dried up. I didn't know what more we could do. And so I thought it was a good time to withdraw.
Let me interrupt you here, Tom, because there's an interesting point. I got an email last week from a guy who wanted to know if I knew of Dalton Smith. Name never came up. He said, well, he was in Roswell. He was an intelligence officer in Roswell in 1947. Went to the yearbook index. He's not in there. Went to the telephone directory. He's in there. He was a major. He shared a phone number with Jesse Marcel. They were in the same office. I'd never heard the name. I suspect you've never heard the name.
No, the only Smith I heard was Robert Smith, the first ATU fellow who was, loading up the wooden caskets or the wooden, the wooden box. Yeah.
Well, I was surprised. I mean, here's a guy we've never heard of. He clearly was in Roswell in July of 1947, and he shared the office with Jesse Marcel. He shared the same phone number. James Brees, who I know you know his name, he had a different phone number. He was in a different office, and we always thought of him as being sort of Marcel's assistant or working with Marcel, but he was combat intelligence as opposed to the general intelligence.
Was this recent?
I got the email. I got the email from the guy last week, and I thought,
Well,
wow, the guy's dead. He died in 2013, so there's not much more to do with it. But I mean, here's a guy that would have probably provided us with some interesting information had we known to talk to him.
Yeah, sure. Like I say, there, as far as I know, all of the witnesses that we talked to are all gone. They're all gone. There may be there may be a couple still out there, but that we don't know about. But
I think anybody who's still out there would have been very young, of course, in Roswell in 1947, and
right.
probably at the lower end of the structure. Some 18-year-old kid serving as a E1 or E2 or something like that. And maybe doesn't know anything.
We always use the magic number of somebody 20 years old in 1947 is now 90. What is he? 95. So. And if they're still alive, they may not be coherent, So that I said, well, back in those days, I'm talking about now the early 90s through the 90s. I remember every night I'd be on the phone calling this number, that number, and this is before the internet. See, if we had the internet way back in 1990, that'd have been a big help to us.
Well, let me interrupt you here because I'm going to have to take a break. We're coming up against a hard break. I put some information up about Dalton Schmitt on my blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And I had another thought about that. I'll cover this really quickly. The diary of Jesse Marcel. I think that Dalton Schmitt may be the one who actually wrote it. That's something we need to explore later. I will be back with Tom Carey right after this, and we'll talk about his experiments, and we'll talk about what he's investigated in other arenas of the UFO field. So please stick around. And we are back, surprisingly back. Caught me a little bit by surprise there. When we went away, I was mentioning Dalton Schmitt, and I probably needed to clarify this a little bit. There was a big deal a couple of years ago about Jesse Marcel's diary. And when they looked at the handwriting in this document, they found this little memorandum book. And I saw literally thousands of them when I was in the military. They were handing out to everybody little memorandum books. And this was one that had a bunch of entries in 1947, and it was in Jesse Marcel's possession. When they tried to match the handwriting to Jesse Marcel, it didn't match. And they didn't know whose it was. Since Marcel shared an office with Dalton Schmitt, I'm thinking that the memorandum book was probably something that was in one of the desks. And when Jesse Marcel moved out of the office, or Schmitt moved out of the office, Jesse Marcel inherited, but all of it ended up in Jesse Marcel's possession. And I think that might be an avenue to explore, to see, well, this is the guy that actually wrote the diary, for whatever it's worth, because there's really nothing in there that clues us in about the events in Roswell. So we were talking with Tom Carey. He is, as I mentioned, and he's mentioned, he's bowing out of the field. And you mentioned he had a couple of projects. So, Tom, what were those projects that you were dealing with there? And since we have nothing, I will continue with this. What Tom was talking about, having lost all the witnesses, was something that I'd run across a number of years ago as well. I think the last guy I talked to personally, who was in Roswell, he was 89 when I talked to him. And he remembered the event, remembered that they were told not to talk about it. I'm not sure how close he got into anything. He just remembered the orders, I guess is the best way to put it. The orders not to talk about this to anybody. Forget this ever happened, have nothing to talk about. And he was 89, and that would have been 10 years ago or something. So he's probably gone as well. And I think Tom makes a point. We were to the point where we're interviewing the children and the grandchildren. So we're moved to 2 and 3 times from the events in Roswell. And I have to wonder about the viability of some of that commentary. by those people. It's very easy to misunderstand something that a parent is telling you. It's very easy to misunderstand the nuances that would be related to something that have happened in 1947, and you're talking about it 20 or 30 years later. Or influences of the media in all its various aspects, whether it's books and magazines, television, documentaries, whatever, to kind of set those in. So we have all of that kind of thing going on in the environment today. So when Tom talks about, we've kind of moved beyond the point where we can get good information now. We're stuck with really moved way far from the primary sources. Tom, while you were gone, I had been talking a little bit about what one of the reasons you mentioned your retirement from the UFO field. I mean, not the UFO, but the Roswell case. And I was wondering, what was some of the last people that you talked to that might have been available to provide some very good insight to what happened?
Wow, that's a good question. The thing was, Kevin, is that we, in my opinion, we had witnesses all the way from the crash site to the retrieval to Roswell to Fort Worth to Wright-Patterson. We had enough witnesses, and the witnesses that we were getting more recently were just confirming what we already had. So in my own mind, I didn't think, well, in the chance that we get somebody, they're just, it's just going to be another witness that we already know what happened there. But as far as a recent witness, wow, that's that would be a few years ago that we had an important one back in the I guess early 2000s. We're at the 2022 now. I can't remember who the last one was that was of any substance. Certainly, I think of Earl Fulford, who was part of the cleanup crew. I just happened calling numbers and got a hold of him. And I'm trying to think of it when I actually stopped making, because I would get the yearbook, the base yearbook, and I'd start, say, with the first air transport unit that was heavily involved, and I just start calling the names, and this is when they were still alive. And at some point, I was not getting anybody that was a first-hand witness that was still alive. I can't remember who the last one was. It was either Earl Fulford or Arthur Osipchuk, one of those fellas who were on the July 9 flight. But I'd have to think about that, Kevin. I can't think of one right now that was recent, say,
Well,
within the last 5 years.
I think you're making the point that we had moved the investigation as far as we possibly could. Time had caught up with us, and there wasn't anybody available that we could find that could provide any additional firsthand information. Right. I had kind of concentrated on looking for some kind of documentation. Somebody had written a personal diary or a letter, something that was dated. We had the Inez Wilcox little piece that she put in that magazine article she was writing, but that had to be written in the 1980s because she died in 1989.
And it didn't say a whole lot either, It really didn't, to me, at least to me, it didn't say a whole lot other than something happened, and that's about it.
And the sheriff was involved and this sort of thing. But the problem with that is we don't know when it was written. If it had been written prior to 1980, then it's an important document because it precedes all the information about Roswell. But if it was written after 1980, then the possibility of contamination is there.
See, for me, the case did not really explode after the 1980 book. I mean, I read it in 1980, but I don't know how widely read it was. But for me, the book that really set this case afire was your 1991 book with Don Schmitt, the UFO case, the UFO crash at Roswell. That's when the case really became known, at least in my opinion.
I think you're right, but my thinking was that the people in Roswell would have been, if Roswell was mentioned in some kind of documentary, that the people who lived there would have noticed it. I mean, you take the movie Titanic, for example. There's a reference to Cedar Rapids, Iowa in it, which I'm sure most people didn't catch, but I did because I lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I don't understand how Cedar Rapids, Iowa shows up in so many programs, but when it does, it spikes an interest in me. And I'm thinking that if you lived in Roswell, that you'd have that same sort of interest, because it's talking about the town where you live. So while you and I may not have been really impressed by the early Roswell information from 1980, I think the people in Roswell would have been well aware of it. I know there were some documentaries. In Search Of did a thing on Roswell, and Jesse Marcel was in that, and I think that would have sparked interest in the Roswell area as opposed to the rest of the country.
Yeah, the what was it? The In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, I think, was the
Yes.
host. There was also, believe it or not, Kevin, 1980, there was a movie came out called Hangar 18, starring Robert Vaughn and Gary Collins, and I'm thinking, oh boy, they're going to talk about Hangar 18, which I'm thinking, how did I already know about Hangar 18? Well, it was 1974 where this guy down in Florida, Robert Spencer Carr, started talking about this Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson. And that was at the time I was going to leaving for Toronto to carry on my studies. And I said, "Oh my goodness, Hangar 18! Boy, I don't want to leave. I want to hear the rest of this." But by the time I got to Canada, it was a dead story. But that's where I first heard about Hangar 18. And then this movie comes out. I was watching Johnny Carson one night, and on comes Robert Vaughn. And so Johnny said, "Well, what have you been doing lately, Bob?" Well, I just finished a movie called Hangar 18. And I went, Hangar 18, oh boy, I can't. And to me, the movie stunk. But but there it was. And that was like 1980. And then it's not until 1991 I had joined CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, after a few years of being a MUFON State Section Director. All I wanted to get was the publication that they put out every month, the UFO, whatever it was. And the next thing I know, I'm the state section director for the 5-county area around Philadelphia. I said, wait a minute, I just want to get the publication. So I started investigating local cases, and boy, very quickly I got bored, because they were all, man, I saw a light in the sky. It went this way. It went that way. Oh, man, tell me more, So
I think one of the things that I got really turned off on in the UFO field back 30, 40 years ago was we really don't need another tale of a light crossing the sky at night.
Right.
It's not going to add anything to our knowledge. It doesn't provide us any evidence. It doesn't provide us with any insight to what is going on. It
right.
Just sort of is interesting, and there's no way to say, well, it's not.
Yeah,
maybe it was a flying saucer. You cannot rule out anything.
It's interesting to the person, but if you've heard 100 of them, I mean, what more is it going to do for you? So there, I joined CUFOS to get the International UFO Reporter, and there were these two guys there named Kevin Randle and Don Schmitt, who were reopening the Roswell case. I said, oh my goodness, that's right. I really liked that case, but I hadn't heard any more about it for 10 years. And that's when I wound up calling you to ask you what you had done about trying to locate the archaeologists who had, see, at that time, we still thought the planes.
Let me interrupt. I got a break here, Tom. So I don't mean to. We'll come back to the archaeologists and all that in just a moment. I'm talking with Tom Carey. We're sort of diving deeper into the Roswell case than I meant to, and we'll get to some of the other aspects of Tom's career here in just a moment. We'll be back right after this, so please stick around. And we are back. I'm here with Tom Carey. When we went away, we were talking about the archaeologists. And I'll just mention here, my undergraduate work was done in anthropology with an emphasis on archaeology. And I think, Tom, your graduate work, when you were working toward a Ph.D., was in physical anthropology.
Correct.
So we kind of had that connection. And so you thought you could help with the search for the archaeologists.
Yes, and I called you and wanted to know what you had done as far as trying to find them. And I think you said you had interviewed one or two, but nothing much had happened. But the story was that they were from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So I said, well, let me have a crack at it, Kevin, because I, live right outside of Philadelphia. I'll go down to the university or look around and see what I can find. Well, believe it or not, we were looking for I don't want to get into the whole Gerald Anderson thing.
We're looking for Buskirk.
We're looking for a fellow named Adrian Van Buskirk was the fellow's name, and Anderson even had effected a identikit sketch of this fellow. Well, I went down to the University of Pennsylvania and opened up the first name in the card catalog that I opened up was a guy named Winifred Buskirk, and he was from New Mexico. I said, this looks interesting. And he had written a book called Living Off the Land, Native Americans, 1950. But it didn't, the book, so I got the book out of the stacks, but it didn't have a dust cover. So I sent away to the University of Kansas, please send me the dust cover for this book. And lo and behold, I received the dust cover, and lo and behold, the picture in the flyleaf of this dust cover matched perfectly with the identikit sketch that your good friend Gerald Anderson had drawn. And that got us going on. We spent, I think, almost 2 years on that fellow. A long time anyway. And that's how I got involved in the case. I also, believe it or not, Kevin, I called William Moore. I said, Mr. Moore, you mentioned these archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania. Do you remember their names? He said, wait a minute. So I hear him walk over to a cabinet. I hear the drawer opening up, and out comes, he says, okay, here they are. And he gave me two names. One was, I can't forget his name. The other one was John Cotter, Cotter, John Cotter. Well, the first fellow, his last name was Bales, Baales. I went down to the university. I interviewed him. Oh, I don't know anything. Well, how did William Moore get your name? Well, I don't know. I don't know anything. Do you know your own name? Well, I'll have to think about it. Well, then I interviewed John Cotter, had lunch with him, went back to his office, and he knew everything about the case. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is it. This is it. Pay dirt. And he says, you know what it was that crashed? And I'm going, oh my God, here it comes. He's going to tell me it was a V-2 rocket carrying a chimpanzee. And oh God, I can't believe this. I can't. Oh, so I closed to make a long story short, I talked to a fellow graduate student at the University of Pennsylvania a year or two later, and she confirmed for me that it was John Cotter, because he had told a class that she was in that back in the 1940s, he was involved in a case in New Mexico that involved the crash of a flying saucer, and it was the Roswell case. So he knew everything, but he didn't give I was there, Tom. He gave me the old V-2 rocket thing. So by this time he had died. And so I got a copy of the obituary, and it turns out he had a daughter living in suburban Philadelphia. So I called her up, and clearly I surprised her. So you sort of talk about, oh yeah, I know your father was involved in the Portales Clovis site near Portales. Oh yes, 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 yes. Now about Roswell, she, the mood changed, and she's trying to figure out a way to end this call. She says, oh, I'm going on vacation right now. I'll be back in 2 months. I'll give you a call in 2 months. Click. Well, 2 months went by, no call. So I called her up, and the only words out of her mouth were, take me off of your list of people to call. Click. So I surprised her with the ambush interview. I didn't mean it to be an ambush. I was just trying to get information. But when they're caught flat-footed, they try to find a way out. And her way was, I'm going on vacation. We had another witness who was Blanchard's secretary, right? And so I called her up, and she said, oh, my goodness, I don't know who you are, but the next time you're in Roswell, give me a call. I'll talk to you in person. Well, the next time I was in Roswell, I called her from the airport. I said, I'm at the airport now. What's your address? Remember you said that when I get to Roswell? She says, yes, call my lawyer. And that's the way it went. That's the way it went. But that's how I got involved in Roswell. Was I was trying to find the archaeologists, and I found John Cotter. And then, as you know, you interviewed oh my goodness, Schultz. C. Bertrand Schultz.
Well, yes, I talked to him, which I think he just wouldn't shut up. You could say, hi, my name is, and that would be as far as you got.
You interviewed the fellow from Lubbock, Texas, Texas
Curry Holden.
Curry Holden, yes. And he, from what I remember of your interview, he's very frail, and everything you said, he said, I was there and I saw everything.
Well, he was 96 years old at the time, so he was very frail, and his goal in life was to live to be a 100, and he didn't make it. And I think he died about 3 or 4 months after I was there. I was just like you, trying to create an inroad, and so I visited at his house in Lubbock. And what I remember most about it, it snowed the night before, so there was snow on the ground. Yeah. Went in and talked to him, and I tried to be very careful in the conversations, not to lead him in things and kind of suggest the answer. So I tried to be cognizant of that problem, and that I'm dealing with someone who's 96 years old. But yeah, he said that he'd seen it all, and I was going to come back and visit with him again. I kind of ambushed them, then kind of forced my way into the house. I feel kind of bad about that, doing that, but they were very cordial people. I think Mark Rodiger eventually talked to his daughter, Holden's daughter, who said, well, my dad got confused easily, and he wasn't there, and he had nothing to do with it. We've spent time, I think you did too, in the library at Texas Tech where his papers were.
Right.
Going through his diaries and things, looking for anything to suggest where he was on that critical weekend in 1947. And I learned that he'd written a check for one of the service clubs. And I don't remember if it was Lions, the Elks, or who it was.
Yeah.
And then there was nothing for the weekend. And then there was something else that came up 2 or 3 days later. So he had an opportunity. He could have taken the class to New Mexico over the weekend and seen something at that time. But there was no way to put him in New Mexico, and I couldn't find anything. I think you looked through the diaries and stuff as well, didn't you?
I did. I did know that he was teaching a class that summer.
Yes.
And that in 1950, Roswell became his base. He was looking for a site to work. That's what they were doing. They were looking for a site to work, and ultimately, he found the site, and Roswell became his base of operations a year or two later. So it all tracked. For me, that was enough that he was looking for a site to work. And
it was Schultz. It was Schultz who put him in Roswell in 1947, and talked about it. And I found a paper or something Schultz and Holden attended a conference, I think, in 1948 or 1949, so we could put them together so they would have had a chance to discuss this. And Schultz talked about, as he was driving north out of Roswell, he saw the cordon.
Yes.
I think we've kind of beat Roswell to death here. But one of the questions I always avoid when I'm talking to somebody, because it's such a inane question, is how did you get involved in UFOs? What sparked your interest in the UFOs? Because I think as retiring it's something interesting to see how you got involved in this thing that lasted so many years.
Yes. My older brother, when I was like 7 years old, my older brother's 3 years older than I am. He's now a professor emeritus at the University of Virginia, organic chemistry, Harvard, and all that sort of stuff. He says he's reading he read things like newspapers, which I didn't. He said, "Hey, Tom, listen to this," and he described for me what ultimately was the Aztec story. It made the newspapers. This is like 1948, 49, something like that. I said, "Oh, you mean Mexico?" He says, "No, New Mexico, Aztec." And so it was the Aztec case, and it caught my fancy of talking about these little creatures and this thing called a flying saucer. What is a flying saucer? And so it was actually when I was in a preteen, and then in my teens, I read books by Donald Kehoe, who I really liked. And so it was a interest. I don't know why it struck my fancy. I think it was the thought of people on another planet. And they've got these things that our fighter jets couldn't catch up to. And that's what caught my fancy. And it continued throughout my life. I would read a book here. I read a book or two from Frank Edwards, Flying Saucer Serious Business. Things like that.
By the way, mentioned Roswell.
Yes, he does.
He gets almost everything wrong other than the name is Roswell.
Yes. He mentions Roswell, but he doesn't go in. He just mentions the newspaper article that there could have been a crash or something like that. But the thing that really caught my fancy, though, because I was sort of and just an observer. When I read the Roswell incident book, it really caught my fancy, because we're not talking about a light in the sky. We're talking about a nuts and bolts craft with bodies. There was a cover-up. There were threats. It had everything, Kevin. It had everything a good mystery had. And that became my focus in 1980. But nothing more was said about it until I read when I got the CUFOS International UFO Reporter, and said, "There are these two fellas that are reopening Roswell," and I couldn't wait for your articles to come out in there. And then when your book came out, I said, "Oh my goodness, this is the case. This is the only case." And at some point, I said that I got the gumption to call you, because I wanted to do something because MUFON, all it was lights in the sky, and that was it. But this was a nuts and bolts, allegedly, crash, and that meant the difference for me. And if you remember, when I joined your team in 1991, we were still considering the plains of St. Augustine as a possible crash site. If I recall it correctly, we were still considering the plains of St. Augustine, and at some point we said, "Okay, that's out. That's out."
Well, let me interrupt here, Tom, because I'm going to have to take a break once again. What's your latest book on the Roswell case? What's your latest book?
The latest book is our final book on Roswell. It's called Witness to Roswell. It's the third edition of our first book, with all of the new stuff that has transpired in the last. Our first book came out in 2007. This is the third edition of it. No, third. And it's got our conclusions.
Okay, well, we'll be back. We'll have to come back to that in just a moment here. I will be back with Tom Carey talking about hopefully something other than Roswell. So please stick around. And we are back with Tom Carey. When we went away, I interrupted him giving a long commercial for his latest book. I thought my book, Roswell in the 21st Century, was going to be my last book on Roswell. Then a publisher asked me to do an update for the 75th anniversary. So I did Understanding Roswell, which I took a little bit different tack than you did. I wanted to look in depth at some of the ancillary issues, like who were the main people involved, and what happened to them. Payne Jennings, I think, was killed during the Korean War, while testing some kind of bomb that detonated prematurely. And
what happened, Kevin, is there was a story that Payne Jennings, because they had to keep up flying status, so they would take their flights when they could, and he was flying a B-29 from Roswell to wherever General Ramey wanted to go. He was flying General Ramey somewhere, and Payne Jennings, whose nickname was Peter Payne, because he was not liked. He was a very all-military type fellow, but anyway, he was noted for hard landings. Like when he landed with General Ramey, Ramey said, "You just shortened the life of this aircraft by 10 years with that landing." Well, sir, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. But apparently what happened is they had a bomb stuck. This is later on, during Korea. There was a bomb that was stuck, and he did one of his patented hard landings, and it exploded.
Well, the story I got was it was a experimental bomb, some kind of big bomb that did get stuck and detonated prematurely and took out the whole airplane. So no matter what happened, that's what happened to him. And
he was. I interviewed his son, who had his diary, and there was nothing at all in Payne Jennings' diary about Roswell. Nothing. And I said, well, that he's looking out for. He's Mr. Military, looking out to cover up, because you would at least think there was something. There would be something in there, like guess what's going on today, but there was nothing. So.
Well, once again, trying to move away from Roswell. Have you talked about investigating other cases like Lights in the Sky? Was there any case that you investigated that really kind of fascinated you other than Roswell?
You mean UFO? Not UFO. Roswell was the only UFO case I investigated for 31 years.
So you're getting into MUFON, and your association was all because you were.
I had one local case was good. Most of them were Lights in the Sky, but one was a family outside of Philadelphia, a mother with her children. They had a close encounter with a triangular shaped craft, which hovered maybe 20 feet over their head. I believed them. They were all shook up, but the case didn't go anywhere. I mean, there's nothing I could do with it other than I believed their story that they had encountered a triangular shaped craft, maybe 20, 25 feet right over their head, that took off real fast. So that was the one good case I had. The other thing is I couldn't get anybody to help me. Everybody, they even said when I would have meetings, well, we're here to be entertained. And I'm like, oh my God. And I would have all kinds of people driving up in front of my house. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what are the neighbors thinking? Because some of them were kind of, I wouldn't introduce them to anybody. And one of them had a leaky crankcase in his car. Every time he drove up, he left a big oil stain in my driveway. I said, that's it. I'm done with these meetings. And so I turned over my position to a woman named Jennifer Stein, who's done wonders. I mean, she's just terrific. I mean, she's she's a documentary producer. She brings in big guests. Because by that time, Kevin, I was only interested in Roswell, and the other people at the meetings, they wanted to talk about crop circles and cattle mutilations.
Well, let's. I know you were interested in the Ramey memo at one point. What's your opinion of the Ramey memo in today's world?
Well, here's the thing, Kevin, is I bought a copy of Stan Friedman went down and made a copy of it, and they started selling DVDs or CDs of the Ramey memo. And this was during the time that I was the state section director for the Philadelphia area. So one meeting, I had bought the CD from Stan. It was $25, and I plugged it into my computer, and it was right where I'm sitting now. And I brought the people who were at the meeting upstairs. I said, "Okay, I'm going to look at this Ramey memo." So I brought it up on the screen, and so help me. Within 10 seconds, I read, "The victims of the wreck you forwarded to Ramey's thumb at Fort Worth, Texas." Within 10 seconds, that's what I read. I also read something about the meaning of the story. And at the end of it is something about crews, CREWS. And the word disc was in parentheses. That's what I saw, like, within few seconds. So over the years, I have looked at that memo occasionally. I say, well, maybe I'll get more out of it today. But as you know, when you try to bring up, enhance it, you also enhance the grain. It's grainy, and you enhance the grain as well as what's left of the letters. So I finally gave up on what I just told you. What's his name? David Rudiak did he did the yeoman's work on it. So I always defer to him. But I did see, "And the victims of the wreck you forwarded at," then Ramey's thumb comes in, "at Fort Worth, Texas." And then the next line, they had the word disc, D-I-S-K, in parentheses. And then later on, it says meaning of story and something about would fare better or something, and something has something cruise. That's all I could get out of it. So.
Well, I got sucked into this investigation. I've been to the special collections twice in Arlington to look at the thing, and watching people with getting better scans than Stan had. I think David Rudiak was involved in one that got a good quality scan, and I was involved in two of them that got high quality scans as well. One guy came up with the idea, what it says is viewing of the wreck. And I look at that, and yeah, I can see viewing. And I look at it again, I said, yeah, I can see victims. And we just cannot resolve it to the point where we can say, here's the smoking gun. There is an area of interpretation. The last people that looked at it, their idea was that you're going to need some kind of artificial intelligence now, because the technology is never going to exist to be able to resolve it, given the angles of the camera, given that it's film, given the distance to Ramey, given that he's got it crunched in his hand. You're just never going to be able to resolve that. You're going to have to bring in some other kind of technology to resolve the issue.
But I saw victims. When like I said, I read it. I didn't have any enhancement or anything. I looked at it and I said, the victims, it looked like an M to me, victims.
And I can see that as well. I can look at it and see that as well, but I look at some of the other enhancements and other things that have been done, and it's viewing of the wreck. I've got an article coming out in the Journal of Scientific Exploration that deals a little bit with the Ramey memo, with some of the things that have been done since Stan got the scan.
If there was some way you could eliminate the noise. The noise is what's making it difficult.
The last guys that did it, they sort of peeled away the negative in layers in some fashion and kind of eliminated some of the noise, but it didn't resolve the issue. And in fact, it turned the word victims or viewing or whatever the word is into remains.
Yeah. The question that I have still, when it says and the victims of the wreck you forwarded to. Now, what was forwarded, the victims or the wreck? Is he talking about? He says
Well,
if it's the victims, well, then it was if I remember, the date of the memo was July 8th.
July 8th, yes.
So to my mind, the victims weren't shipped out. The first flight was on the 8th. The uh, which flight was that? The Pappy Henderson flight on the
Yeah, I think
8th.
so. Yeah, I think so.
And as far as I know, that went direct to right field, right?
Yes. Well,
So
the thing is, Tom, the critical word is victims. If it is victims, then that changes the whole meaning of the thing. If it's viewing, that changes it in a different direction.
it means that there was a wreck.
But the balloon could have been the wreck, is the point. Once you get beyond victims, if it's not victims, then there's really nothing in that takes us into the extraterrestrial. If you've got victims of the wreck, then we move toward the extraterrestrial, and we just cannot resolve it to the point where it's helpful, which I think is a sad thing.
See, but to me, the word wreck is more than a balloon. See, that's just my own take on it.
Yeah, I understand. It's the point simply is we cannot resolve it. There's no way to resolve the question to the satisfaction of 90% of the people. Because even if we brought it up and it said victims of the wreck, fairly clearly, there'd be always that 10% of people that say, well, it really doesn't say that, and you guys are making it up. And I mean, how many people claim we never went to the moon? So there you go.
Well, this is going nowhere. So
yes,
where it always winds up.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could talk about this the rest of the day, but
you and I could, and I think we could have an interesting conversation for you and me, but the rest of the people may not be thrilled with what we're talking about.
Right now, they're changing the channel, so. But that was to me. It's the smoking gun it's still the smoking gun of Roswell, is the Ramey memo.
It's important
just because what I saw, and when I first looked at it, I'm thinking, well, that this memo could say anything. It could mean that Fort Worth is out of toilet paper. I don't know, but that's what I read without knowing where this memo was going to go. And I think we're boring the viewers.
We're getting right up against the clock again here, Tom. You're retiring from ufology. You said that you were not actively looking for anything, but if something came your way, you'd certainly explore it.
I would be if something plopped on my desk, Kevin, with having to do with Roswell now, because that's the case I'm tied to. I would be remiss if I didn't follow up on it. But I'm not out there like we used to. We would go out there in the desert. You know what it's like out there, and I'm through going gumshoeing it. Knocking on doors and things like that, like we used to do. So that part is done. But if something comes on my desk, yes, I'll take a look at it and see what I can do about it. But,
well, I had a bunch of other questions for you, Tom, but we seem to have skated around them. So we'll let it go at that. Hey, Tom, thank you for taking a chance to chat with me today about your retirement, your semi-retirement, and more about the Roswell case than I'm sure the audience is thrilled about. So thank you very much.
You agree that there's really no place to go.
It's something, well, like Dalton Smith. Well, that's a nice lead, but it would have been great 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing more we can do. There's nowhere else to go. So
but I am looking forward to my these cases that I've been the two projects that have been on hold for at least 10 years now.
Do they have anything to do with UFOs?
No.
Oh, well, then we don't care.
One has to do with World War II, and the other has to do with a cryptid.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, we'll have you back sometime when you can talk about those then.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Tom.
That's been my pleasure, Kevin.
You have a good day. Well, that was Tom Carey. We were talking about his retirement. Unfortunately, we didn't get to some of the things I wanted to talk about, but these things happen. Next time, I'm going to be talking to John Shirley, who is something of a skeptic, and we've got a long agenda to talk about what's going on in the world of ufology today, which is problematic. And as I say, I think it's really where we are today is where we were in 1947. We're doing the same things we did then. The blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. The latest book is Understanding Roswell. Take a look at Level Land, which talks about that case, and of course, UFOs in the deep state. I will be back next week with John Shirley. So thanks for tuning in.